Those little things make a big difference. If someone's driving by your facility and there's a bunch of weeds out front and trash on the ground and one next door is clean, they're going to go to the clean spot. Like, these people want a safe place to store their stuff, and the way your business is presented matters.
We look at this stuff and it's like, oh, it's only, $30 here or there. And then you look at it over a month's time frame and it's like, oh, well, that's like $1,200. And then you look at it over a year and you're like, oh, well, that's actually a pretty sizable little chunk of money there, an extra revenue. And then you look at it on a cap rate and a valuation and you're like, dude, this is like tens of thousands of dollars.
But at the end of the day, it's a simple business model. Like, you're providing a place for people to store their stuff and they'll pay you money for that. You don't need any qualifications. You don't need any degree. And we've seen people totally transform their lives by getting into this industry.
All right, everybody, today we have an incredible episode for you. We're talking about how to run your storage facility like a pro. And George, man, we talk about everything from management to employees to revenue and expenses and, looking at all of these different elements and the levers that you can pull within storage and how value can just be created to an incredible degree. Like, this was just such an amazing episode, man. I'm excited to get this one out.
100%. We dove deep into today's topic. Like, I would highly recommend stay until the end of today's episode. We talk in depth about expenses and reviewing your P&Ls to really squeeze every last amount of value you can get out of your facility to ultimately help you make more money. So make sure you listen all the way through so that you can really see how to run your facility like a pro.
100%. Everybody bust out those notebooks and get ready to rock and roll. I'm super excited, man. I'm really, really happy to dive into this subject of how to run your facility like a pro. We want to talk about some of these things that really allow you to set yourself aside in the marketplace and be able to operate your facility at a high level, at a high degree, and to a standard that you really should. So I think it'll be great to kind of dive into some of this stuff and outline really what you can expect, because at the end of the day, like, you don't want to go into and buy the storage facility and not extract the utmost and maximum amount of value out of it for you, for your family, everything else, investors, if you've got them, that kind of stuff, so I'm excited for it.
If you don't own a deal or you're looking for your first deal, like, you'll learn a ton in this. But something that we talk about a lot too is that we want to be able to continue to learn, even, as AJ and Cedar continue to buy and have this large portfolio, because you can get stuck in your routines of just operating things the same way over and over. And so even if you're someone listening who has multiple facilities, things just constantly change and evolve. And the way you run a facility is always going to be continuing to change, and you should be looking to improve just like any other business.
And you had a fantastic idea before the podcast. And let's kick off with that, man, about, ways not to run your facility. What are some things, George, that you're seeing from our community and from self-storage in general? Like, what are some of the ways that people aren't running their facilities like a pro that signifies and like waves that huge flag, like, hey, opportunity here for potential acquisition?
Yeah. Once you start to identify it a few times, you just like start to see an eye for it really quickly. You'd be looking at a few properties in a market and you can really see the outliers of like, who are your best operators in this area? Because they really stand out. And especially when you're looking at it from an online presence, like, so often today, like a customer, someone who goes and rents a unit, they go and use their phone to look up like, okay, I want to rent a unit to store my stuff. And if you don't have a solid online presence today, like, you're just not going to be found. It's crazy to now be in 2026 and to see you go on and look at these businesses that either don't have a Google profile at all, a Google business profile, or it's just, they're just not optimizing it and utilizing all of the tools there. So not having their website there, not having a phone number. They have like 2 Google reviews on there, or, like, they're not responding to reviews on there. So that's really the first thing that I go and look for, because you can just do it so easily on your computer. We just had a broker present a deal to us for a mom and pop facility, and it was still a website that, didn't load properly. You couldn't rent online. And so all of these things are just like, signals to be like, hey, there's money on the table here. This is an opportunity to go in and improve this. And then, make it increase the revenue and ultimately increase the NOI and have more money in the bank account. And so I think that's really the first identifiers is like, what can you see just off a quick search? Because again, like, from a customer standpoint, they're going to quickly just go to the path of least resistance to rent a unit. Like, that's what people are thinking. And so that's step one of what I would look for the things not to do with a facility.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. And, as you identify those facilities and start actually diving into it, calling them, doing your secret shopping, like make sure you take notes, man. Like figure out like who's actually answering the phone. Is there a phone system that's answering the phone? Is there technology? Is there not? You'd mentioned like the online move-ins, can you rent online and move in and access the facility in your unit? And how do all of those things work and function? And are there any gaps that you could improve? The online presence thing is such a low-hanging piece of fruit. Creating websites is like such an easy thing nowadays. There's so many providers out there. I mean, you've got Store Local, you've got these other companies that package together for you and have all these services ready to go that you just connect with them and you can coordinate and hit the on button.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
yeah, those things can be huge. And then, yeah, as you dive into that stuff, if you're getting feedback from those individuals, if you're connecting with a manager or an owner, or they have pricing or something posted on their website, you're able to start seeing, is there a pricing discrepancy? Are there different unit sizes maybe in the market that they don't currently have that maybe you could retrofit at that facility or expand at that facility and provide? Maybe there's a lot of people that are wanting covered parking and there's very limited covered parking, and it's a simple, easy thing for you to come in and say, hey, yeah, like numbers wise, works really great for me to come in and put some covered parking. It's in super high demand. Everybody wants to throw their boat and RV under covered. Finding the gaps of the product types and services. I know we always talk about this thing too, is like we look at every single unit type as its own thing. We're not looking at a facility as a whole and saying overall occupancy is X, Y, and Z. It's like what's the individual occupancy and the utilization of every single unit type, so that we can identify those gaps, that we can identify risks, that we can identify opportunities to drive rates, to provide more of those units. All those different things are really, really great insights. And those are the things, if you take them on their flip side, of all the stuff that we're talking about, those are the things that you should be doing to really run a fantastic facility.
Yeah, I mean, we quickly talked on like how to not do this, but if you're talking about how to run a facility like a pro, like as you were going through all the different things, like what I was hearing in my head is like you got to be an active operator in this. You have to be paying attention. You can't just lay back and think that like, oh hey, everything's set up, everything's, all my systems are and everything are in place, like things are just humming along. Like if you're trying to really optimize this business of self-storage, like you're talking about the pricing, like you really need to be paying attention to what juice is there that I can squeeze on these different units. And if you're just like sitting back and being like, well, we charge the same price for all of our 10 by 10s, like you're missing out on opportunity there. Something that comes to mind is like whoever's answering the phone, there's a sales aspect to this, and simply just relaying information isn't enough. Like Sarah on our team does a great job of this on the phone conversations, talking about this of like, when someone picks up the phone, you're assuming the sale. Like, here's the unit type that we have. You have, discounts in your back pocket if you're trying to, someone feels like they're going to stay for a while, or, you want to be able to hook them in. You're making sure that they're signing up for their tenant protection. That's a whole nother revenue stream for you as well. And it's a service provided to the customer. There's some like activity needed in this, whether it's you or a third party or an employee or a contractor that you have, especially if you're in the midst of taking over one of these mismanaged properties. Like you want to be able to be, front and center on the phones, you or someone on your team, to be able to drive in those new customers, and really the customers that you want, who are paying for value as opposed to the cheapest price possible.
Lots of people are out trying to buy facilities, small ones that range everywhere from $300,000 to $4 or $5 million. They're worried about getting the money or having the financing. This is why we team up with Live Oak Bank, because they get this. They understand storage. We have them help us underwrite deals for our students and others. They are one of the best people in the industry when it comes to getting loans, especially small business loans. They can actually help the customers when they find the asset, understanding how much debt can I get? What's it gonna look like? That changes them from being a bank to being a real asset to the customer. We recommend Live Oak Bank to our students as well as others that are trying to get into the storage business. They have an in-depth knowledge of this asset class. It's more than a bank. It's more than simply getting money. They're actually an asset and a partner to them, helping them go through all the things that they don't know and understand.
If there's one thing that you could do that's just going to potentially solidify your success as you move forward, is assuming the sale in all things, just through and through. That sales aspect is big for sure.
And think too, like these people are calling you asking for information. So there's no reason to be shy of making your offer, explaining what you have, and then like, being able to use that value-based pricing for like, hey, we have a 10 by 10 at one price for, front row right by the gate or back by the corner. Or like, especially with climate control, maybe you have like a discount for a second story if people have to take on a mezzanine floor or something like that. Like utilize those to your advantage. And then that ties into the other aspect of like, in order to know those prices, it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to charge this because I think that's what I can get. But it's like, what are your competitors doing in your market? What does the occupancy look like for there? Because if you charge that price, do they even have another option of somewhere to go? And that's going to be very different depending on where you are throughout the country.
Exactly. And you touched on a really good thing too here. And it touches on as we dive into this, like what to do. And this is in no particular order. We've got some notes that we want to run through and some talking points. And one of those is the employee aspect, especially when we're starting out. It's very easy to have employees wearing a number of different hats, but I think as soon as it makes sense, as soon as possible, you should be hiring for those specific subject matter expert roles and positions. This is a prime example, like touching on the sales side and the physical day-to-day function of the facility. It was really difficult for us, like hiring wise, to find people that were good at doing both the administrative interior work and doing like the administrative office inside work, sales stuff, and people that also enjoyed the exterior sweeping out units, using leaf blowers, doing outside work. So to that point, make sure that you're making note of those things and hiring for specific functions as soon as you can, instead of trying to just blanket everything. And on the topic of hiring, one of the things that I think is important for people to understand is hiring for culture as you go through and do it. Trying to hire and then train culture is one of those things that I don't think works. I haven't seen it really work and be successful. I think it's really important to find those individuals that jive with you, your long-term goals, all those different things, where you want to be, what you want to do. Those things can just be a huge leg up to where, you just got a better level of camaraderie and connection and productivity within the workplace, and retention on top of that. They enjoy working with one another and those different factors too. So it can just be kind of a management issue sometimes if you're hiring folks that are just so vastly different. And I understand too, at a certain scale, like there's no way around some of those things. Like you're going to have to navigate that. But when you're starting out, hire for culture and hire for specifics.
Let's break this down for a second of, what goes into this, because for someone who's a beginner, maybe this is your first time listening to an episode on this Self-Storage Income podcast, like the fact of hiring somebody could be so overwhelming. And it really doesn't have to be, but like what Connor's talking about, like hiring, an admin person and a salesperson, these different specialties, that might not be the case for you in a situation buying your first facility that's only 50, 60, 100 units. Like the facility can't hold the weight of multiple people working on it. And that's where you're going to leverage yourself and your skills, whether it's working with third party or contractors or call centers, whatever it is. But you're not going to have, 3 employees working at your small facility. But it's still important for you to think about what Connor's talking about at these larger facilities that, Connor has managed, because there's operational aspects to self-storage that stay the same as you scale and some that change. What you do want to focus on, though, no matter what, as Connor was saying, is the culture aspect. A lot of people who are buying self-storage facilities, especially, in our community or who listen to the podcast, they're setting up remote management. They're trying to buy a facility that's maybe out of state, across the country, not something that they're going to buy and create a job for themselves. They want to, it's something we really emphasize, like, you are trying to buy this to become a business owner, not become a self-storage manager. And so when I think of that, if you're running a remotely managed facility, there's a certain amount of trust and autonomy that goes into the person that you're hiring, which if you find that right fit is a great win-win for you and for them. They can go have their checklist of the things that you need them to do. And then, you have that feedback loop of like, okay, here's what they're getting done. And then that allows you to know the rest of what else needs to happen that's not on site, where you're trying to then optimize that through technology, automation, things that don't have to be happening on the ground. And then the one thing that I would add to this, specifically with the sales side, is that if you're getting into business in any regard, my advice here is to get yourself comfortable with sales, because just the word sales can be a turnoff for some people at times, but you're providing a service to someone and a solution for a need. And so like my take is it's usually easier to outsource the boots on the ground admin tasks, even if that means if you're the person doing the sales and the phone calls for your first facility. It doesn't mean you're always doing it, but you're going to be the one driving revenue in the door for your business. So my take is you should take the responsibility on that to develop your systems and processes as opposed to hiring that out day one.
I couldn't agree more. And I would say probably the best sales book I ever read was the old Dale Carnegie special, that How to Win Friends and Influence People book. And like just taking a genuine interest in people, like knowing their names and smiling and being friendly and creating real, authentic relationships with people is a huge win-win. Whether you're out there talking to brokers and owners right now, trying to find your own storage facility and kick up some opportunities, or you're dealing with your tenants at your facility and working through rate increases, or talking to folks who are interested in coming and renting at your facility, or whatever that might be, just having a day-to-day interaction with a current tenant even. Things go such a long way in just having those genuine interactions with people.
Right.
And then to that, because we're touching on like the employee side of things, and I think one of the things too that a lot of people fail at is providing like very clear expectations to anybody that is working for you in any capacity, as far as what their tasks and duties actually are and should be, is really, really important. So you've got to really make sure that you're communicating to the utmost degree what those things are and what they look like, and also provide feedback. If there's any deviation from those things, having that immediate feedback to them saying, hey, this is the standard. We're a little bit below standard on this, this, and this. We're at standards or exceeding standards on this, this, and this. Let's put a little more emphasis on this stuff over here. Like, you've really got to have a level of management where you're getting the feedback that things are actually getting done that need to be done, but then can also give those employees or contractors or whoever it is that are working for you that immediate feedback as to how things are going, if you're on track or if you're off track.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like the biggest mistake I see with this delegation aspect is the owner not taking the ownership over things not getting done. And so in other words, if you're hiring a contractor to go do your lock checks for you and your boots on the ground work, and they're failing to do them up to your standards, like ultimately that's a failure as you as an owner for not explaining the expectations clearly enough. And again, like disregarding situations where the person doesn't show up or just doesn't care. If they're trying and not getting the job done right, that's really up to you to improve it and to take the accountability to yourself to set them up for success. If you take that responsibility, then you have control over improving it, as opposed to just saying, oh, if people just worked harder today because they don't care anymore. Like, I just feel like that's not a solution oriented mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of, like, what do I need this person to do? It comes back to revenue first. Like, you have your checklist of things for them to do. And a lot of it is based around, like, we always have them do like a lock check of like, well, let's take the rent roll of your facility and match up that of like, okay, this unit 1 says that it's paid. There's a lock on it. It looks like they're paid. Okay, great. Unit 2 says that it is not paid, but then there's stuff in it. It's like, okay, something's not matched up with the rent roll. And so like what you want to be able to do is make sure that any unit that should be available to rent is actually available to rent. Because if people come to your website or to your facility and think that there's a unit there that they can rent and it's not, you're literally preventing yourself from making money. And so like, not to say there's other things that aren't important, like pulling weeds and all of that, because it is. You want to make sure that the facility is looking nice. But like when you're building down your checklist, like start with the revenue producing activities first, because that is going to be the immediate thing that allows you to continue to pour that back into your business to fuel it.
That is a pro tip if I ever heard one, man. Revenue first, man. That is it. You've really got to focus on those things. And too, as you guys find what those gaps are, I mean, you might very well get your own facility and think like, all right, like I'm just going to run and do all this stuff myself. And you might do that for a minute and you might be doing okay at it and surviving, but you might find things that aren't getting done as well as they should be, or maybe there's things breaking here and there. And those are really good things to just continue to make note of and identify. Use those pain points. Like, don't go out there and like preemptively try to hire people for things. Like, one of the standard practices I love to use is just feeling the pain first, identifying what's breaking first, and hiring to fill those gaps specifically, because that can really help paint the picture as far as like what you need. It's like, do you need another boots on the ground person, or do you need somebody to manage more of the sales, or maybe more of the auction process, or whatever it might be for you. So those are some of the things that I like to focus on, and we're kind of alluding to this in you'd said setting your people up for success. And I think that's really, really important. And also taking ownership as a leader and as the owner of the company. It's really, really important to have that ownership and to focus on setting your people up for success, because at the end of the day, they're choosing to come and work for you. They're choosing to work for you, spend their time with you, their effort and their energy in exchange for that value you're providing to them. And I think one of the things that so many people in organizations could do better is focusing on those people that are doing the things with them and for them. Bring them in, provide them the opportunity that they're looking for. And going back to the whole winning friends and influencing people stuff, like take a genuine interest in who those people actually are. What makes them tick? Do they have families? Like, what are their goals personally and professionally? Like, there's just a lot of that stuff that is easy to overlook. It's easy to get caught up in day-to-day stuff. But again, going back to the relationship building side of things, I think that's just one of those that can't be swept under the rug and should be something that we put more emphasis on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this can be felt in all businesses as well too. When I was in my early 20s, I worked in the trades, and just like seeing the turnover there and how much it impacted these small businesses. Of you think you have 4 people on the job site today, and you have 2, and a lot of it was because like it was just not the best work environment. And so I think of that for like with your storage facility, or really any business, but it's like employee turnover is one of the like fastest ways you can really run your business into the ground. And being able to do those small things of making that person like feel seen, and that they're not just someone there to do tasks, but they're actually part of what you're trying to grow as a business, and they're playing a key role in that, really helps them want to stick around for a long time. And even if they don't, even if they leave, because again, like a boots on the ground has so much room for growth, unless they become part of like you're really scaling your business. You want them to be able to leave on good terms, feeling good about it, and then it makes it easier for you to bring the next person in. So that doesn't mean like sometimes employees will still head on to the next journey and leave, and that's okay. But you want to be able to set them up for success, because it's one of those things that comes back around in the long run at your facility. If all of a sudden you have an employee who doesn't enjoy working for you, who knows what they're going to say to customers that they see on site? Like you never know how those things will have a ripple effect. So it's really important, and it's just a better way to do business as well too. I think you'll just sleep better at night knowing that you're providing an opportunity not just for your customers, but for the people who are working for you as well too.
And on the success side, man, I want to talk about, I want to make sure we dive into a lot of these just different management checks and balances too that we've got. Um, and we kind of talked about having like checklists and some of that stuff, which I think we'll dive into here in a bit. But one of the things that you guys really need to be aware of, especially as you are starting out and starting to build your business in self-storage, is make sure that you guys are documenting your processes, and have all of these things being put together for your employees or for yourself. Or God forbid something happens to you and your family's got to try to pick up loose ends, or whatever it might be. Have the paper trail, have the SOPs, have the documentation in place that outlines how to do the certain tasks that need to be done.
Yeah, simple things of like making sure that it can all be utilized with technology. Like Sarah's doing this on a facility she's managing right now, of converting the rent roll lock check process over to Google Sheets. And so we're still not using this crazy, like it's just a spreadsheet that we're using. But now the boots on the ground can go and fill it out on their phone or on an iPad or tablet or something, as opposed to having to fill it out manually with their handwriting, go take a photo of it, or go back and then update it. So it's like those things, especially if you're managing them remotely, wanting to be able to have things where you can get quick feedback to correct those things. The longer it takes for you to get that information that you need of what's happening on the ground, the longer it takes for you to fix those things. I think it's really important to be able to have level of things that you're checking weekly, really. Like we've used this in other businesses, but like a stoplight report where it's like, hey, here's the 5 to 7 metrics that we're tracking, and we want to pay attention to them weekly. A few ones that I think of How much are you spending on ads? Like, what does it take to acquire a customer? How many leads are you getting? Because if you don't get leads, it doesn't matter how nice your facility looks. There's not going to be new people coming into the door. What is your conversion rate for the people calling? And so those are the things that are like the faster feedback loops that you have, the quicker you can make adjustments and pivot when needed. And so back to Connor's point of like the documentation point of this, like you want to be able to have this set up so that way you don't have to go to the facility to fix an issue every time something happens. I guess to share a story of an end result of this, of what it can look like. One of our members, Jody, she was on the podcast a couple months ago. She was on an anniversary trip in Italy. So they have, her and her husband, Darren, have 4 facilities. And she's like, I had to check in one time on our facility because we had just had all of our processes in place. So we are able to go to literally across the ocean to another continent, and our facilities are humming along without them having to do anything. So it's like, that's
Amazing.
the scalability that can be really great with self-storage when you do it right.
And the things that are going to help do that is not only building the processes, but to have things in place that also track those processes. So it's also really important if you've got this checklist that, you know, you've got boots on the ground or an employee or whoever going through, maybe it's an admin person, whatever, you've got to make sure that you have processes for yourself. And this is kind of ties into what George is talking about with like that stoplight report and some of these things where it's like you're reviewing what's happening. And yeah, maybe you're reviewing certain metrics weekly. Then maybe you have some metrics that are expanded a little bit for maybe your like monthly and quarterly meetings. So seeing like some good trends throughout a month or a quarter can be really good indicators and stuff. So it's really important that you guys set up processes and systems, but then have that extra layer of confirmation of those things actually happening, because man, I'm telling you, it takes a matter of a couple weeks for things to just get out of hand fast. I mean, prime example, I mean, we had a facility, I use this one all the time. We had a facility that we hadn't been to. It was about a month or so that we hadn't been there. We had an employee there that was supposed to be there doing everything day to day, and they were showing up, hanging out in the office, like literally doing like none of this stuff. This was back in the day, and we ended up having to, one, lose the employee because we weren't able to identify the issues fast and provide that immediate feedback for them or any of that kind of stuff. But then we also had to spend a ton of money. It was over $10,000 for a company to come through and remove all the weeds that had grown throughout the entire facility over that month time frame. Like we're talking totally freaking abandoned. Like the facility looked horrific, and this is just in like a month's time frame. Like nothing crazy. So it's just so important to make sure that as you guys are building, don't set yourself up for failure to where you're building, and then you're like, cool, I'm hands off, and then you've taken 10 steps forward and now you're taking 20 steps back because you've got to go all the way back, or take all your time and effort and energy and focus off of the key revenue driving pieces, and now because now you're just doing the problem solving and trying to fix issues that shouldn't be issues to begin with. There's going to be a certain degree of that. There's always going to be learning curves. There's always going to be things that you have to go through in your certain circumstances or scenarios. But me and George's mission here is like, let's provide you as much info as you can so we can reduce that time.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like the hope of you guys listening to the podcast is to learn the mistakes and the issues that we've experienced, that Connor's talking with that facility, without having to go and make them yourself. So like hopefully we can save you guys the time and stress and headache of that. Let's dive into some of the things that we look for someone going on site to do the upkeep of a facility. Like, some of the things we have on our checklist that we've already mentioned are like the first one that always comes to mind is the lock check. Like, what is, matching that what the software on your rent roll shows up on your property management software matches up with the unit count, like, and the actual what's on the doors. Like that's such an important piece, because if that's off, then everything is off. Your occupancy is going to be off. Your revenue is likely going to be off. Your late payments, your delinquencies, like you need to make sure what's on site is matching with your software. Seeing crazy stories too of acquisition opportunities where they're so far off, which is like great in ways, because then there's so much improvement to be made. But it's one of the fastest things you want to do is to fix that. And I think too, like, really, in my mind, anytime someone's on site, they should go and do that. It doesn't take that long to do a lock check of everything. And then the other one is like a big reason why people have to go on site. The thing that we have not automated through technology is move outs. So if someone goes and moves out of a unit, you want to make sure that thing is available for the next customer as soon as possible. Again, going back to revenue, like that always starts with making sure that things are available for the next customers. The biggest thing. If this person is also, a maintenance person, going to fix anything that's causing issues, the biggest one is your gate or lightings or security cameras. You want to make sure that things are functionally working for you. And then simple things like weeds, like you want to make this a presentable facility. Like those little things make a big difference. If someone's driving by your facility and there's a bunch of weeds out front and trash on the ground, and one next door is clean, they're gonna go to the clean spot. Like these people want a safe place to store their stuff, and the way your business is presented matters.
And verifying that like contractors or vendors have been there and have actually performed the work that they've been hired to do, whether that's landscapers or somebody has been hired to come and fix a door,
Mhm.
or maybe there's some unit damage or a bollard or something like that that's been damaged, like making sure that you can have somebody confirm that the work you've hired somebody for is actually being done, especially before you like issue payment on it, like circumstances for sure. Making sure that things are to the standard you need them and expect them to be, and that the stuff is actually done. Really, really important. But you're also going to want to just make note of any damage, like talking damage in general. If that person's showing up and they're not documenting, like, hey, like there's this unit 123, the door's all like somebody backed into the door, it's all jacked up. Like if they're not making note of those things, it's really hard to go back, dude, and be like, hey, like when did this get damaged? Like who do we hold accountable for it? Well, like we have no idea. Like we don't have the camera footage anymore. So you just got to eat this, $1,000 cost to go get a door replaced, or any unit damage for that matter, or facility damage. Gates are another big one. I think gates must have a target on them along with buildings. Those are really good things to be looking out for, documenting damage. And then on the sales side, if they're there and they're connecting with people, just making note of like any problems or issues they're hearing from customers, good things they're hearing from customers, things that customers want to see more of. That stuff can be huge. Fire extinguishers are another one. Like if you've got fire extinguishers or fire suppression systems of any kind, making sure that those tags and inspection tags and that kind of stuff are actually up to date, that the inspections are happening when they should, making sure that HVAC and temperature control systems are set up within the proper ranges, that they're functioning well, that filters aren't dirty, that they're getting changed out, making sure that lighting is looking good, that cameras are working. We're getting granular into some of this stuff, but these are the things that I would expect somebody to go through as boots on the ground and just make sure and confirm literally everything at the property is working as it should. Everything at the property that should be happening is happening.
Connor just went really in depth there, which is great. And I think it kind of proves the point of why you want to be able to have a clear outline for the person going, because they're not going to remember everything. Like I don't remember everything
Mhm.
Connor just said right now.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, for sure.
And so it's like you want to be able to set them up, and maybe they don't have to check every single one of those things every single time. Like maybe there's something that you check every time you go, check weekly, check monthly, but having a regular cadence. Something that I remember you had implemented at one point, Connor, was when the person would go on site, there was designated spots they have to go and stand on and take a photo of that. And I think that's a great way for you as a business owner, if you're not there on the ground, to be able to have, because they might take a photo and not see the issue, but it's your property, it's your baby, you're going to care about it on a different level. And then you also have a timeline of it. If they're doing that every Wednesday, you have 52 Wednesdays throughout the year to be like, okay, how has this changed or evolved? So I think that's something really cool that you did, especially when into managing a portfolio. You just need some type of documentation that you can go and look back and see those physical changes when you can't actually be at all 30 facilities every day.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly. And then, the other thing is if you don't have the camera systems that are advanced enough to just go in and see those things immediately, just be able to get eyes on as many inches of the facility as you possibly can to make sure and confirm, yet again, that things are actually where you want them to be and where they should be. And that kind of touches on this idea of I wanted to make sure that people know that they should be leveraging things like that. They should be leveraging technology, even in its simplest form. Like you're talking about, Sarah, just using a spreadsheet for
Yeah.
doing a lock audit. Like leverage these pieces of technology that make things so much easier for your employee, for your contractor, for you. So automate when you can and where you can. This also goes back to like your website and all these different things. Like leverage as much as you possibly can to drive remote operations, to drive tenants to self-service. Make sure you've got the signage and the phone systems and the QR codes and, the process for them to, move out or to move in, outlined at the facility and on your website. Like all the how-tos, those different elements are really important to helping to capture that truly, remote and optimized facility. I think remote is talked about a lot, but I mean, it's almost to the point where remote is kind of like a given. And it's like, well, of course, yeah, we're not going to have somebody there all the time. In my head, it's changing to this just optimizing your facility to like today's standards, which is running more remote-esque, if you will. And one of the things too, I really wanted to touch on here from like a management standpoint, and this kind of ties into some of the revenue and expenses stuff, which we'll briefly touch on. But the aspect of like being hard to kill and stacking reserves like a madman. Like these businesses, they're businesses and they go up and down. There's seasonality, there's occupancies, there's black swan events, there's all these different things that happen microeconomically, macroeconomically that can affect you, that can affect your tenants, that can affect your income and occupancies and expenses and all the things and in all the ways. Make sure that you've got some strong operating reserves. And this is like on a case by case, person to person, whatever your risk profile is and whatever your preference is, it's up to you. But man, for me to sleep at night, like I want to have some at least 3 or 4 months of operating reserves. Like worst case scenario, if we didn't make another dollar for the next 4 months, like we're good. Like it's just such a good thing to have, set you up in a really, really great position. And the other thing about not only stacking reserves, but stacking resources to where maybe you don't have an opportunity right now in front of you, whether it's another acquisition or it's upgrading something at your facility, maybe the timing's off, whatever, or the pricing is just too high, whatever that is. Like the important thing too about stacking your reserves and stacking your resources is being able to execute on those opportunities when they hit. Because the last thing you want to do is not account for those things and not have the resources. And then you have this amazing opportunity come around that you literally just cannot do anything with because you don't have the resources to do it. So just some side notes that I wanted to talk about from like a management standpoint and bigger picture piece that I think is something that people really need to focus on, especially as we move into times where we've got technology changing the world in so many ways. Like it's very hard to understand how all of these things are going to impact all these different industries.
This to me is the difference between being an investor in self-storage and being a self-storage business owner. If you have the perfect looking facility and the greatest checklists and security and all these SOPs, but your expenses are out of whack, like you're gonna be out of business. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how nice things look if you're not running a profitable business. And so like going back to like tracking these things, I think that you want to be able to see each month like what is coming out of the bank account that is, necessary for this business. So we look at storage on operating margin, and that target is somewhere between 35 to 40%, meaning like every dollar you make costs you 35 to 40 cents to make that dollar. And that excludes debt. So that doesn't include any loan payments that you have, but that's your gives you your net operating income. And these are concepts that are in place for every business, not just self-storage. And so you want to be able to see like what expenses are actually, some expenses are true expenses, other expenses are investments. Like I look at your ad spend is an investment in bringing in customers, and that factors into your customer acquisition and then your ultimately your lifetime value. That's very different than like this was the cost to fix a light bulb. You still got to do it, but it's a different thing that's happening. And then what really gets into the issue is when you're paying for things that have no purpose. Point being is that you want your facility to be able to stand on its own 2 feet where you're not the one bleeding it from the inside out. Like Connor was saying, having those reserves in place, we even look at like structuring that into your underwriting, like putting 2% of your revenue or your profit back into the facility. The easiest way to destroy your facility is to think you're going to buy it and then just live off the cash flow day one. Like this is a long-term play. This is not a get rich quick industry. This is, building something that is lasting wealth. And then that really comes into play with how you take care of your expenses.
That's such a huge thing. Like staying on top of your ARs is one of those things that's really important to do from an
Yeah.
expense standpoint. Like it's really easy to let those things get out of whack if you're not like staying on top of it. It's great. Like little side pro tip, like get people on auto pay. I would honestly, if it was me right now today, I would literally, if I could, whatever state I was in, you'll have to check with your states because some will restrict what you can and can't do as far as taking payments, cash versus auto pay and some of that. But I would be like credit card auto pay only. That allows you to have a little bit lower delinquencies, stay on top of those things. You can have systems that follow up with people if their cards are expiring, or you can follow up with them manually prior to their card expiring so you can make sure that payments are coming in consistently. That kind of stuff is huge. Also want to make sure that we touch on just some of the granular stuff. Like make sure you're reviewing those P&Ls, man. Go through and review those expenses. Like, dude, do we really need to be spending this much money on this porta potty thing or at the facility? Or like, okay, we're spending all this stuff like repairs and maintenance on this HVAC system. Like we've spent $4,000 on the last, year or so. Like we could have just replaced it with a new one. Like, what are we doing here? Like, let's put a new one in there. All those different things can provide some really good insights to what's working, what's not, and making sure that you're like really protecting that margin. I love that you shared the margin piece here a little bit. It's so important to make sure that you're protecting that margin because you have all these elements out there that are affecting that margin, your cost of insurance, your taxes, I mean, just inflation alone. Making sure that at least, annually you're increasing your rates to a degree that allows you to make up for those differences. It's so easy to just kind of let things go and allow yourself to not pay attention to those things and just slowly, without almost even realizing that it's like you're kind of making maybe, a similar amount of money, but your margin is just slowly, whittling away and whittling away. And that enterprise value, if you're looking at an exit or a refinance or those different things, it's like that's getting totally destroyed and you have no idea. So making sure that you're squeezing the most amount of juice out of these things as you can, manage those expenses, review them regularly, make sure you're looking at all the revenue pieces, you're looking at your rates, you're looking at the fees that you're charging. Maybe it's been 5 years since you updated your lock cutting fee when you've got to go cut somebody's lock, or a late fee. Like maybe it's still $5 when it should be like 30. Maybe there's these just different things that you could be driving at the facility that seem really small. This is another thing that I love about storage, man, is like we look at this stuff and it's like, oh, it's only, $30 here or there. And then you look at it over a month's time frame and it's like, oh, well, that's like $1,200. And then you look at it over a year and you're like, oh, well, that's actually a pretty sizable little chunk of money there and extra revenue. And then you look at it on a cap rate and a valuation and you're like, dude, this is like tens of thousands of dollars.
I think too, it's like when you start to really look at these things and see the levers that you can pull and the impact it can make, like that's when business gets fun. Like that's when it's like, hey, like
Yeah.
I can actually, I'm not just investing in the stock market where you can put all your research into buying a stock, but then you're just hoping that it goes up over time. Like once you buy that stock, your only option is to buy more or sell. You have no control over it. But with storage, you can so much more hands-on, and you can go and review your P&Ls and be like, what do we need to cut? What can we do to update our fee structure that is ultimately going to increase your bottom line and make you more money and do the things that you got into this industry in the first place. So like it could be overwhelming at first if you're right now just thinking about storage for the first time. Like there's a lot of levers that go into it. But at the end of the day, it's a simple business model. Like you're providing a place for people to store their stuff and they'll pay you money for that. You don't need any qualifications, you don't need any degree. And we've seen people like totally transform their lives by getting into this industry. So like I love when we start breaking down stuff like this, talking about going through P&Ls or the difference of a $5 versus a $10 lock cut, and you extrapolate that over 200 units. Like it's a big revenue change right there.
Man, with that, I want to end on like one of the most important things that I think that people overlook too in this industry is the network side of things. I think we don't put enough emphasis on how important it is to build relationships with other storage owners in our markets and connect with industry professionals. And, I think of any industry, the self-storage industry probably does one of the best jobs of like people being collaborative and connected. So that's huge. But I want everybody to know, like, do not go it alone, man. Like, go out there, talk to owners, go to industry meetups, go to a self-storage income event, go and talk to the people at Store Local, like go and just get involved. There's state associations, there's all these different avenues for people to get involved and to start learning about storage and to see those industry trends going on and to keep up with those and to bounce ideas and to see like where the industry is heading as a collective whole and just what people's pulse is on certain things. Like I can't tell you how much value is there for you guys to be able to go and connect with people like that and get those insights. It really reduces, like Alex Hormozy always talks about his ignorance tax, where he's like, I don't want to pay this ignorance tax. I want to like try to pay as least of that as I can. So I either go out and, hire experts or, we're going out and we're connecting with people that know what the heck they're doing so we can streamline that success. So network your tails off, man.
And that's true whether you are just getting into this industry and you have 0 deals or you own 10, 15, 20 facilities. Like we see and that's one of the reasons why we love the podcast with self-storage income, because it helps us connect with other people as well too. Like Connor and I have done recent podcasts where I'm like, I didn't know that. Like I'm learning all this cool stuff about AI and self storage and other people finding new acquisition opportunities or meeting with other people who are operating in a new way. Like I love learning about this, and I think that storage is a very giving industry where the people who have had success in part because of the other people that they've met who've been in the in this industry like AJ for decades, who are so giving with their knowledge. And so it's a good industry to want to be a part of for that. And then I think too that if you are talking about the ignorance tax, like we have in our notes here of like don't get complacent. And I just think of that of like even if you've reached, say you have a portfolio, you're full-time in storage, that doesn't mean that you can't be improving or changing the way that you're running things, because especially with technology, AI, automation, things are changing so rapidly that there can always be ways to improve your margins, create a better experience for your customers, and then ultimately, continue to scale your business. Like AJ and our team, we're still doing that even after AJ's been in the industry for 20 years. We just had Ben on recently, who's closing his 15th facility. He's still, trying to improve the things that he's doing. Even like AJ and I did a webinar yesterday for a free training, and I saw Drake Schmidt on there, who's been a part of the community for years, goes to all these store local events, owns multiple facilities, and he's still out there trying to learn. Like it's like it should never stop. It should always be that constant, lifelong learning mindset. It's so easy to think like you've reached this level that like you're good, you don't have to learn anymore, and storage is not like that. It's changing a lot.
Amen to that, man. Amen to that. If you're going to do anything like a pro, like it doesn't matter what you've done, it's about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got to stay relevant and stay, top of game. So, no, I freaking love it, man. This has been a fantastic episode. Really appreciate all the incredible insights and talking points here, George. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, agreed, Connor. Good stuff. Appreciate you guys all for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
All right, we'll see you guys.